I'm going to try that out.
Okay. All right. Oh, did anyone shout it out on like Facebook and stuff?
No. If you want to do that real quick, that would be cool. I posted it in the Slack group.
Get the
countdown up.
How do I find the YouTube on here? Okay, let's find this. If you on the tubes of you. There we go. Post that up real quick. Let's see. Clark.
Okay. I'm going to do the intro thing here in a moment. Oh no, it went back to the other screen. All right, hold on. Get rid of that. There we are. All right. 48-hour art check, round 272. What's up?
What's up?
How's it going?
Good. So we've got James Clark with us today. We'll kind of be getting to that in a minute, but we're gonna do an episode today. A little bit just Clark and I were having a conversation the other day, and I said we need to talk to Josh and Scott. So that's kind of where this episode came from. So you're into illustration, drawing, storyboarding, comics, and you are college student or trying to enter into the industry. This is the episode for you. So what I was thinking, Josh and Scott and Clark, you can jump in if you want. Is that we just do a really quick art check, just maybe 30 seconds a pop on different things, and then jump into the topic.
Sounds good.
Okay. So I can go first. As far as progress goes, I got I put up that animated short that I did on the Battle Dome, the Congressional Battle Dome, the gerrymandered districts of one, and then I started a thing with Jim Lujan. We did our first episode about an hour ago, so that is up. How about you, Josh?
I caught like a slight glance of that video, and I'm pretty stoked about it. It sounds pretty good, so you guys should all check that out because it's some good news. And I'm doing good. I got more thumbnails done. I did manage to hit like a thumbnail a day. I did miss one day. I've also been sending out press releases like a madman, and sent some follow-ups today because it's the release date for this book. So if you guys haven't bought Two Stories, the graphic novel I did about faith and mental illness, hand lettered, hand inked, it's a labor of love that's taken years to make, and is now on Amazon to purchase. So go on Amazon, get Two Stories by Joshua Kemble. So I did that, and the press releases and stuff. And so far the launch has been pretty cool. Gotten some potential leads for other things, and then I did a really great interview with Beautiful Voyager, which is this great podcast that talks really openly about people struggling with mental health issues, especially like anxiety and overthinking, and which is kind of like right up the alley of what I'm writing about. So it was a really fun, like really candid conversation, and there's like a link to that on my my website, joshuakemble.com. If you just look under interviews, it's like the first one up there. But the edited podcast should come out in a couple weeks. So yeah, just been hustling and busy. Yeah.
Cool.
Scott.
Yes. So I produced a few videos. One will go up tomorrow. And then I did another quick video for my patrons. And besides that, I've been working as usual on publishing some books. I showed this book, I think, last time or a few times before. So this is an inspirational coloring book for boys. And right now I'm working on an inspirational coloring book for girls. So that's what I've been working on.
Awesome.
Okay, and I'm wondering if my connection.
Oh, sorry. What was that, Josh?
I was wondering if it's my connection that was blipping out there or Scott's. Is anybody else getting the blipping?
I heard Scott.
Okay, so if I start freezing during this, just maintain the flow and I'll come back on. Okay, cool.
Okay. Clark, what have you gotten done in the last 48 hours?
48 hours. So I've started to ink a bunch of pages to a short comic issue that I'm trying to do. And it's kind of practice while I kind of work and write on a graphic novel, which is kind of a bigger project kind of on the side. And so, yeah, just trying to push my skills and get content out there, that kind of thing.
Cool. Awesome. So for challenges, oh, we lost Josh.
He's predicted it.
The semester's wrapping up, and so everything's going nuts. So just not anything specific, but just trying to get everything done before Christmas and get all the grades and all the stuff. And then there's a new class that I'm teaching next semester that I've got to get ready for, and stuff like that. So just basic things. How about you, Scott?
Okay, challenges, sort of a big one. I'll try to keep it brief since we're kind of going through this. But so I'd like one day before without just this stuff that just comes out of nowhere, and but and that doesn't happen. But anyway, so I got an email from KDP, who I'm publishing the coloring books from, and I had a book that was rejected because there were a few pages that they said there was a problem with, and there's no rhyme or reason to any of the stuff. I mean, I've published tons of books traditionally, and the stuff that they're asking for doesn't make any sense. So originally I was publishing the books without bleed, and then I did some books with bleed, and then I just decided, well, I'll just make them all with bleed, and if it doesn't bleed, it doesn't bleed. I don't have to worry about it. But apparently I got a message saying I need to extend the artwork on these pages to the edges, or else it won't print. And if you know anything about bleed, it doesn't mean every page has to bleed. It can bleed. Right. But and I've done it this way on other books before without problems, and it wasn't every page. And every page I used the same template. So it makes no sense. I mean, whatever computers or whatever they have that's looking at these things, it just doesn't understand anything. So I basically had to go back and reformat all those pages for non-bleed, because I knew if I tried to, and it's time sensitive, because this book I'm working on is like a New Year's type book, and it's taken forever for books to get approved. And if it gets kicked back like it did, then it goes back to the beginning, and what usually takes about 3 days to approve is now taking over a week. So it's a nightmare. And I knew if I tried to, I don't even know if I can contact anyone and say, no, this is what I want, just print it the way I want. I don't know if they would do that or not. So I just said, I'm running out of time. I gotta reformat the whole thing. So that's what I did. It's so frustrating. It really is.
That is
you
super.
Never know what's going to come back and for what. And there's no, seriously, it'll give you like 5 pages out of 25 pages, and it's all the same template. So why are the others okay and these aren't? It makes just zero sense. So anyway, that was my challenge.
Yeah, man, that's annoying.
There's an old saying in like among production artists that if it can go wrong, it will with art. Like it's if a factory or a printer can find a way to mess it up and get it wrong, they will. Yeah. But it's frustrating when the goals shift. Like that's the worst. I think just when there's shifting goalposts, that can be maddening.
Yeah. Josh?
Sorry, are we going through challenges? Okay, so challenges.
Yeah, challenges.
Yeah, today's been nuts. The whole just like trying to do press releases along with doing the groundwork for a graphic novel is really hard to juggle. So I've maintained it so far, but I am starting to feel that just like, like when, I don't know if they still do this, but back in the day before you dissected a frog, you would put 2 pins in their head to like scramble their brain. And I've felt like that like all week, where I feel like somebody just stuck 2 pins in my head and scrambled my brain. And then this morning, like Mai's memory like is shoddy on this brand new iMac that we got her. And so she's, if anybody's been following the show, it's like, she's been illustrating like 5 kids books, and then whenever one's done, there's like another added on. And so it's just hard to get that resolved. I mean, it's not going to cost us money, but it's going to cost us time, which is going to cost us money. And so like it's one of those inevitable things. But if anybody's dealt with like crashing computers and having to deal with retail stores and directly with Apple, which by the way, Apple Care is always pretty on point. Like I can't speak highly enough to that. It's a good reason to actually own an Apple, because they have a pretty good replacement and fixing kind of program that like, something like an HP may not have. And then, but yeah, it's been so crazy busy that like, I was all excited about getting this new rowing machine, and it's still sitting in a box like right there. So like I haven't had time to build it, but yeah, it's so long story short, it's just a time struggle and a juggling struggle that I'm maintaining and balancing, but it's been extra hard, and I'm losing time that I don't have to lose. So.
I hate computer stuff so much. It's like the worst.
Yeah,
it is frustrating.
Yeah, and I had to like go be a Karen for a little bit, and I hate doing that. So I was
right.
like, I hate it because I know from management, like, you literally have times in your life where you have to be the squeaky wheel to get the grease, but it's really annoying to be the squeaky wheel, especially when people don't proceed in good faith, and you're like, oh, come on, now I got to be the squeaky wheel. This sucks. Like, so anyway.
That's true. Clark, challenges?
I guess what I'm doing is my challenge. I used to do like a picture a day kind of thing, but now since I'm kind of doing the short like comic book, like those sketches are going to a sketch a day to the comic book, so it's kind of working towards a goal more than just kind of being like a filler in my sketchbook.
Yeah, cool. Okay, let's do plans real fast. What is it? Monday? Is today Monday? I feel like it's Friday. What a week. Yeah, so I have got to do some sound on episode 1 of Endo Exo, and then finish the credits. And then I need to, there's some stuff I'm doing on the thing with Jim Lujan and I can't remember what we're calling that. I'm not sure if it has a different title than the thing, but it's Unchanged Fist is the short that we're going off of. And so there's some like setup stuff that I need to figure out with lighting effects. So that's kind of my plan. Scott?
Just publishing, working. I'm just going to continue to work on this book, and if not, and also if I get that done, then I want to work on some of those gross food stickers, because I eventually want to do a video based on how to make wax packs and sticker packs and stuff. So I need to get on that too.
That has to be a wacky pack like that. It just has to be.
Yeah,
it's so like perfect for that.
It will be. So yeah, those are the 2 things.
I forgot to mention something Scott and I had talked about. I pulled the trigger on a screen printing kit.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Like a kit, like is it the thing you put together? I guess I got one in my garage that it's got, I think, 5 things.
Yeah, it's not like a t-shirt station. I'm gonna do postcards and patches with it.
Okay.
So I'm not gonna. I mean, you could do t-shirts with it, but I probably won't do like production t-shirts. But Anyway, that's future plans because it's not here yet. But
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm kind of excited to get into that world. I've never done any screen printing, so
I was super excited when I got it, but it's been sitting in my garage for a while.
I can't tell if Josh is having a stroke.
Oh yeah.
Or if he is frozen. So maybe we'll do plans with Clark before we jump over to Josh.
Gotcha. So my plans are really just kind of work on my portfolio, just try to, I guess, get myself situated and like producing professional content and stuff like that, just because I don't have that foundation. And so that's what I'm really kind of focusing on right now.
Okay, good. All right. I'm gonna guess Josh's plans. I'm gonna send out 10 press releases a day. There's going to be a big announcement coming up soon of when it's going to when the book is going to ship. Let's see, what other plans might he have? Get the rowing machine set up. Those are my guesses. And he's gone. I offended him. Okay, he's left. All right. When we come back, we're going to talk about getting work in illustration as you're entering the marketplace. So let me hit All right. Hey, Josh is back.
I'm back.
I did your plans.
Having challenges. Spectrum is.
No. Oh.
Right as he was about to say something bad about the giant telecom company that is giving him the internet, his internet freezes. That is not a coincidence.
Yeah.
Oh, you're back.
Am I still frozen?
No,
you were for a bit there.
Okay, good. Jeez.
Don't say anything bad about
that was the telecom just cutting my audio.
Okay, so Clark, do you want me to kick this off, or do you want to kind of like ask some questions, or let me give you a little bit of a rundown. My background is mainly in marketing and art direction. I have never made a living off of illustration, whereas Scott and Josh have both made the majority of their income off of illustration for most of their career. Am I right in saying that? That's pretty.
Yeah.
And there's other stuff that's in there. Anyway, I felt like having you two involved in this conversation would be more helpful than me. Use new AC adapter or reinsert.
Oh,
we're having a technical failure day, which is great.
Okay, I've still got audio, but Clark, why don't you kick it off? If you've got any questions, or if you've got, well, let's start with this. What are your goals? What is it that you're trying to do? And then maybe we can kind of go from there while I fix my camera.
Gotcha. So mainly what we talked about is like I want to get into a lot of the storytelling side of illustration, and whether that leads me to do artwork for like any kind of entertainment, like a Disney or Pixar, or even things like video games. I like that part of like character or world creation, and so. So that's what I want to get into, is like my profession. But on the side, I really enjoy doing my own stories. I like comic books. I like all that kind of stuff where you can really, tell something to an audience, and they can either learn something or just experience a journey from the content that you create. And so, at least for the things that I'm doing, like with comic book illustration, that's kind of stuff that I hope to kind of do on the side for like my own personal goals. But where I'm at life right now, I'm not quite sure like where to start, what stepping stones to really like plan to work towards, all those kinds of things. And so that's just kind of what Corey Kerr and I talked about for a little while.
I think I don't know about Josh, but the kind of the problem that I have is that I can tell you what I did, but that was like ages ago. So I don't know. I think some of it still probably holds true. And also I'm kind of now going in a different area, although I still, like you, I still do comics as a sort of a labor of love type thing. hopefully I'll be able to, once my book's done, just like Josh just finished his, hopefully it'll bring in some money, but I don't know if I'll ever be able to make a living off of that type of thing. But like right now I make money. A lot of the money that I bring in is based on like things that I would consider comic adjacent, like tools for making comics, content about making comics, stuff like that. But as far as, and I don't know, I mean, I don't know if we'd be telling you things you already know as far as, I mean, I guess so you mentioned the storytelling aspect. I mean, I have worked in like with a video game studio. I've worked, oh, awesome. I've also done storyboards, have you done any storyboards yet, James?
I mean, not a crazy ton. I mean,
right.
A little bit for work, but nothing, nothing too professional.
Yeah. So
James works for a student-run advertising agency on campus, and so they will do advertising videos and advertising animations. And I know he's storyboarded a bit for those.
Yeah.
Okay. So, like, were you gonna say something, Josh?
Well, so I have a couple questions, like, because I think this might help just to like give you a starting point. Like one thing that helped me early on was like kind of picking a battle and attacking it. And so like initially, like you want to think about like if you're aiming to get into like character art for film, you need to get out of where you live. I mean, like, obviously complete your schooling, but you need to be in like Los Angeles or Orange County, depending. If it's for gaming, you probably want to be in Orange County. There are some gaming companies in Utah. Am I cutting out or freezing, by the way?
No, you're fine.
You're right.
Am I?
There's also some stuff.
Sorry, I just want to make sure Yeah, totally. But the point is, you want to consider where you're located, because telecommuting in the area of like character art and stuff is not as common. I mean, it's possible, but it's not as prevalent for work. But there's a whole bulk of like interests you mentioned, as well as character design, and I would kind of pick one or two and really target them. Because I feel like a spread focus can kind of lead to, it's almost like scatter shot when you're trying to hunt a deer. Sometimes it's better to just have like a direct shot at the one thing you're aiming for. So like a case in point is like I'm interested in comics. I love cartooning and stuff, but the first entry point that I saw into illustration that I could make a living at was educational art, which was just an opportunity I had. I knew some people who worked for an education company, and so that was my end to like my first freelance illustration work. And I did that while I was in school as a student. And then I started kind of like at home, like when I was off work, because I was starting to get paid work. I built the portfolio that I'd need to get the work that I wanted. But I would say like kind of targeting a specific area. There's also like, if you want to get in film, there's a whole bunch of different methods that you should take. Like if you want to do, we've had like Scott and I have had a couple of my friends who I graduated with on our show that like do costume art, right? And they've done like costume art for like X-Men and like all these big films. But the direction to go into costume art requires a lot of like, there's a guild that you have to join. It costs money. You have to apply for it. You have to have 2 members vouch for you. And then if you're in that guild, then you can work on major motion pictures. Otherwise, you're going to be like kind of scrapping for like the side projects. Storyboarding is very similar, where it's like you'd want to get in with like famous frames or rep. Or if you're not doing that, you probably want to aim to be in the Storyboard Artist Guild, or union, sorry. And the union's really hard to get into because there's 2 ways into it. You can either be on a film that's non-union that goes union, and you have to have been on the film for longer than 8 months, right? Or like somebody there's an opening in the union, and the only way there's an opening in the union is if everyone in the union is employed, which hardly ever happens. So, but the way you get in on that is you start asking and start directing gearing yourself towards storyboarding. And you can also, like Corey's talked about this multiple times, but you can also gear towards like more local storyboarding gigs, like starting with like commercials and TV and stuff. But that's a totally different portfolio too. So I think a good starting point, I'm just saying, like a good starting point would be like, where do you want to work? You know?
Are you talking geographically?
Does that make sense?
Yeah. As far as geographically, if I can chime in, because my opinion differs a little from Josh. I know Josh is in LA, and he's right. I mean, obviously there's tons of work in LA versus other places in the world, but now a lot of places, especially now that people's working remotely, are subbing things out there, working from home. Now they may not, LA studio may not make an exception for somebody outside of LA, but there are companies and things that are moving away from LA. I know Netflix is going hard into New Mexico. There going to be a massive amount of jobs in New Mexico. They're going to be producing stuff. I mean, it's going to be like, there's also, there's other places, Canada, there's other cities and things. I live in Phoenix, which is, I've lived here all my life, and there weren't a ton of video game like companies, but there were a few that I worked at. And same thing with, storyboards. Now I haven't done, there was an animation studio here that I did some storyboards for feature film, but most of the stuff I did was more commercials, ad agency stuff. So it just depends. I wouldn't say it's your only option. Like if you're like, yeah, I don't care, I'll go where the work is. Then yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of work in LA, but there's also a lot of competition. Like I may have not got the jobs that I did, like at the video game studios here, if there was so much talent out here. But I was able to go in there and kind of, there wasn't a lot of talent or people that had experience. There's probably talent, but it's probably like what would you call it? Like maybe raw talent, but not polished enough where they had samples and things ready and have the experience to go along with it. But it looks like you have the experience just running that ad agency. That's pretty impressive, actually. The stuff that I was, you were showing. Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, I'd go crazy if I had to do the same thing. But I mean, I know what Josh is talking about, and I do agree with that. But I don't know.
I want to clarify too, because I agree with you, Scott, too, in the sense of like in Arizona, right, with like Todd McFarlane Studios, right, like which is a great place. Like that would be a fun job where you're doing a lot of character art, and it's in the toy industry, right, which is a whole other industry that's spread out across the globe. And also Scott's dead on in the sense of like, if you were to move to LA just to be an artist, you're going to be really depressed in the sense that you're competing with like half of Warner Brothers who just got laid off because of COVID, so and honestly, like a lot of those people are full timers for DC Comics. So they're not lightweights when it comes to like drawing ability, so you can work anywhere. My point in trying to kind of isolate like an industry or like a real key interest in the sense of what you want to do for a living is it can help you make decisions. Like if you want to work in film, you should live in LA. Like you should. If you want to work in video games, you should work in a video game area, or at least when you're telecommuting, really target those specific areas. And if you just kind of generally want to get your feet wet, like doing professional work outside of like the design studio that you run on your campus, then that's a whole other possibility that can open up a bunch of different possibilities. But I personally just think it's good to like try to pick like a road to travel a bit and see what happens. Whereas if you try all roads, it can really, I don't know. Maybe you guys disagree, but I feel like trying all roads can kind of lead you into a lot of minor results and not necessarily enough indicators as to where to head. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, I think it's good. And I think it's good to dabble in all this stuff so you know how to do it, because I think that's helpful. But when you are presenting yourself, if you're all over the board, that can be a problem. I know I had interviewed at a ad agency once, and I brought in a bunch of stuff that I thought they'd want to see, like logo designs and things like that. And then, this was on my iPad. I was flipping through, and then I got to like my personal work. And they said, and that's where they told me to stop. He said, no, that's what we wanted to see. That's why we brought you in here. It was kind of a weird thing, because they brought me in having already looked at a lot of the stuff. And then they said, we don't really have anything right now for you, but we wanted to just talk to you because we really like what you're doing here. And if something comes up, because it's unlike what the other stuff that we've seen and everything. And eventually nothing came out of that, other than when I got home that day, they ordered like about a couple $100 worth of prints and things from my store. But so that's a good thing. But so yeah, I don't know. I mean,
so I had there's a couple things that I think have kind of come up, and then I want to hear from Clark a little bit. But one thing is finishing projects, because I know you and I have talked, Clark, but just generally speaking, finishing projects shows something a lot, and that's what Scott was just talking about. Is like he had done a bunch of client work and he had a bunch of other stuff, but what they were really interested in was like, oh, that's interesting, you're doing some personal work. Let's kind of talk about that. Let's see that, because that shows not just like that you can start and finish stuff, which is actually really rare, but it also shows like initiative. It shows that you're going to like be motivated without having to be motivated from like an external source, like a boss breathing down your neck or that type of thing. And so that shows a lot. And if you can tailor those projects towards something, like I was just watching like Nickelodeon on their Instagram, their YouTube is starting to do a series talking about how to get into storyboarding. And they just released that today, the first episode. And one of the things that they were saying was, a lot of storyboard artists come from comics, because it's a very similar like sequential illustration, style of doing things. And so having a good comic book portfolio, could help you indicate to people like, look, I know how to sequentially tell stories through illustration. And then you can pair that with like, see how I've done it for clients, see how I've done it in my comics. I can do it for you. Here's something that I drew out for an animated short that a buddy and I did, and eventually over the course of, in a short period of time, actually a year or two, you have quite a few of those finished projects under your belt. And I think that kind of communicates a lot. So what, I just want to get some reaction from you, Clark, so far. What are you thinking? What questions do you have? Do you want to keep going in this direction with the conversation? Do you want to ask a question that takes us in a different direction?
Yeah, I guess like, I guess really at the end of the day, like an artist is trying to make a living at, and so that's one of the things, like, yeah, my passion is in storytelling and comic booking and things like that. But especially in today's world, there might not be like such a heavy like niche for that anymore. And so I mean, where my talents are, they I guess at the end of the day, like hopefully it'll make me enough like money with the type of work that I do in order to live comfortably and all that other kind of stuff. And so I guess like,
yeah,
what are good ways today that you've seen like that break into a business that help people to be like current with their skills for the time, but also be able to make a living as well?
Can I kick this question over to Josh? Because Josh, you run an art team and you hire a lot of people like Clark. So what are
So I
some
wanna-
red flags and what are some like green flags?
Okay, so I want to second something Corey said and really highlight it because I don't want it to get like passed by because we're going to go over a lot. And Corey's a smart dude and he's worked as a creative director, so it's like he knows this. But when you're reviewing portfolios and it's student work, I mean, if it's mediocre student work, realize like, especially if it's an area close to the school, it like I can name when I'm interviewing people. I'm like, up Art Center. 2006, like this person graduated. Oh, 2012, it's that project, right? Like I know the projects from these schools, unfortunately, and I'm going to explain why I say unfortunately, because Corey is dead on, and I really want to highlight it about personal work because what you're doing in school is practice, and it should be building the legs of a portfolio, but it's not the table that the portfolio should be, right? Do you know what I mean? Like. It's going to give you just enough to maybe get a bite of work here or there. And it's definitely going to hone your skills and create presentable, mainly teach you how to finish and make quality work and to push yourself and do the work to do it, right? And learn proper anatomy and composition and all that fun stuff that you're in school to do. But if all you have coming out of school is a school portfolio, realize like, you're going to be competing with everyone who just got out of school with the school portfolio for similar gigs. And on top of that, like, and this was something that was told to me when I was a student that really hit home with, and this isn't to say it's dog eat dog. It's definitely an industry where all a rising tide raises all ships. So you don't want to be like cutthroat in the way you're approaching clients or art, but you are competing. And a lot of the time you're competing with your heroes, right? Like when I was applying for, this is back when I was freelance, but it's like when I would apply for like Women's Health magazine, if I got that gig, there are a lot of illustrators that are in plenty of illustration annuals and legends in the field who didn't get that gig. And somehow I got it, this unknown guy, right? So that's something to keep in mind. When you go out there, you want your portfolio to show competence. You want it to show your ability to do whatever job it is that you are applying for, right? So it's going to be really hard. Like if you have all fantasy illustration and it's robots and zombies and stuff like that, it might be hard to land a job drawing like cupcakes and frilly girl products for like a clothing line or something. And you'd like to think that the person you're interviewing with will have the creative ability to see like this person has talent. If I gave them that, they could draw it because most artists can see that. But a lot of the time, the people who are hiring you are not going to be able to see it. Like Corey recently did a billboard for a client, right? And he had to do a mock-up of the billboard. That doesn't mean it's a bad client. It's just people have trouble visualizing. So you really have to put what they're looking for right in front of them and spell it out for them. So that's one of the reasons I really recommend targeting industries, especially in your own personal work. And I also don't want you to discount the possibility of doing what you were talking about, like dreaming of doing. You don't have to necessarily settle for like just any paid gig. It will help you in the long run to have a target. And if your goal is to do story, figure out what realm of story you want to go into and have that be your end goal, right? Corey's I'm sure he's talked about this because I know he's a fan of this, but you want to back plan, right? So right now you're at a really perfect point in your life to back plan. And that doesn't mean like the crazy 10-year restrictive plan that, counselors give or whatever, but it's like, if like I was trying to say with like the moving and stuff like that, it wasn't to like freak you out or make you think like that's what you have to do art. It was just more to kind of highlight the fact that like there are certain paths that are going to take you in different directions, and having an idea of that path is going to help. So I would really start really doing some hard thinking about who you want to approach. Another good start is just take like the artist that you like and admire and back plan based on who they work for. Like find artists that work in your field and find out who they're working for, who's hiring them. You know, there's all sorts of ways you can get your feet wet, but I would definitely recommend try not to go into a job interview with like your life drawings from from class. I mean, there's some job interviews where that would be great, right? Like especially if you're going to do story for animation, it does not hurt to have a loaded portfolio with a lot of gestural, like knowledgeable life drawings. But even in that case, if it's like a 50-minute drawing, which for students is like, it's not enough time, and that's a ridiculous amount of time for a life drawing. But if it's full of those kind of like fully rendered life drawings, if you're applying for like a fine art gallery, that's great. But if you're applying for like a storyboarding gig, they're going to want to see that quick stuff, like the gesture stuff, the sketchbook drawings you did at the zoo, you know, and a lot of that kind of stuff you aren't necessarily going to be building in school. So that one example of what I'm talking about, like, so I went to school with this guy, Jeremy Spears, who's like a awesome dude, like really cool, but he always like knew what he kind of wanted to do when he was in school, and he really wanted to work for Disney. So what he actually used to do is like he'd gear all his illustration portfolio towards that style, and not necessarily working in the Disney style, but trying to build a portfolio that was worthy of like an Art of Disney book. And not just that, he did his research. So he was like, okay, all these dudes who end up working at Disney like go to this zoo on these certain days, like the LA Zoo. So I need to find a way to get to that zoo, to that art meetup. So I'm like learning whatever they're learning at the zoo that seems to get people who go to this zoo and do the sketchbook thing hired. And then he moonlit at Art Center, even though he couldn't afford it, like, because we were going to Cal State Long Beach. He'd get off school at Cal State Long Beach, do his illustration assignments. Then he'd drive down to Art Center and just sit in on the classes because they let him. And that helped him build connections with the people. And weirdly enough, like within a year of graduating, he had an internship at Pixar. And he's done story on Zootopia. It's a shocking thing, but he wanted to work for Disney, and it's a weird thing. He's working for Disney. A friend of mine wanted to do Imagineering. He's an Imagineer. So it's like, but there's different paths to different careers. And so like that doesn't mean your first gigs, like that same friend, Jeremy, used to do U-Haul trucks. Like that was one of his freelance gigs, was just doing really quick vector illustrations for side graphics on U-Haul trucks, you know, and that's one of his first illustration gigs. But he had that goal in mind, like the whole time, to guide him, so that like every path he took was at least kind of moving towards it, or trying to support moving towards it. You know, does that make sense? I don't know.
Yeah, no, perfect sense. Yeah.
And to kind of clarify a little bit, I think, of what you were asking, are you saying, you know, where is their work, like at the start? Is that kind of what you're asking?
Yeah, I guess for getting straight out of school and things like that, because I know how competitive artistic industries are, and like I know some people, they started off at like working at like a printing company, and all they did was do like simple stuff like signs and all this other kind of stuff. But eventually they got up into doing actual like work for movies or video games and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And he said, like, without that job first, it would never have opened doors to what he's able to do now. Mm-hmm. And so like, so like, I don't know exactly where that good place to start would be, or like, I don't know. It's kind of like you have these dreams, and then your parents are just like, oh, like you should start here first, and then, you know, and then see where you go. And so, so I didn't know if there was anything like that where like it builds a portfolio, or it builds a foundation like in your artwork that kind of opens doors to everything else. And
so kind of what Scott was talking about at the beginning, I think is important, is that every person out there can tell you what they did, but what they did isn't going to work anymore because it was
100%.
either, it was either 10 to 40 years ago, or, it doesn't exist anymore, or they did it, so it can't be done again, or that type of thing. But the main thing that I think is really important to look at is try to reverse engineer everything that you see. And so like if you see an illustration somewhere on a product or a billboard or a TV commercial or anything, like start seeing that stuff and then try to like walk it back. And like somewhere there's a company that hired or has on staff somebody that did that.
Who's the art director? Who's the art director?
Right.
Who's the HR, right? Like, if you can't find the art director or the HR, right, go on their website. What is their email lists? Like, because every company has a format for their email. By the way, this is
you're breaking up.
Something most, like, you're not always going to get handed like a mailing list. So what you do is you go on the site. Like, I want to do an illustrator. I'll just name one. Like, I want to illustrate for Variety magazine or something. I don't even know if they exist anymore. But point is, you go to that website, right, Variety, and then you look at their editorial sheet, right? And like on their editorial sheet, it's going to have different sections of the paper or the sections of the website. What section of the website hires illustrators? Right? Like the next time you're online and you see an illustration online, be like, if it looks like a customized illustration for that article, somebody got paid for that. So then you find out who hired it. Or the next time you're grocery shopping, right? And you buy a pack of mac and cheese and you're like, hey, this is a cool illustration. Guess what? Somebody got paid for that. Look up that company. Who's the art director? Contact the art director. Be shameless. I still have it on my business card, and even in doing this press release, it's worked very effectively. I had one person just come back to me and was like, I wasn't even going to respond except you said shameless self-promotion on your website. And they thought it was hilarious because you kind of have to shamelessly self-promote. And so that what Corey is talking about is really important, really important.
Yeah, and I also think that you can, so that's the one side of it, is you kind of hunt down like, who's doing that type of thing. But then that will start to open up stuff, that'll open up like, oh, I didn't realize that there's like a whole agency that just staffs, illustrations for this type of thing, or whatever. But then I would also look at like people like Scott. Like Scott right now has multiple streams of income that are coming from a bunch of digital products, digital downloads. And he has moved away from client-based work, which he still takes on occasionally, but I don't know percentage-wise, but the vast majority of Scott's income is based on illustrations that he is selling through products or downloads, or he's creating stuff for Amazon. He's making stuff for design cuts or things like that. And so that's another thing, is like anytime you see stuff, like I think most artists stop at, well, I guess I could sell like stickers, or I could sell posters, or I could sell patches. And it stops at like the products that you can sell. But beyond the products that you can sell, like, can you invent products? Can you, because if you can have like, let's say that you get 5 or 6 things out there that start moving, and each one of them you make, $20 a month on. Well, now you've got an extra $100 that you didn't have before. Yeah. And if some of them start taking off, maybe a couple of them are making $200 or $300 a month, and you get a few of those, and those start to build. That can give you enough of a cushion to kind of be able to move a little bit and not be so desperate. Because I mean, the hardest part about this is that your rent and your food and your utilities, they don't wait for you to get like ready. You know what I mean? Like they're due now. And so you've got to figure out something, a day job or a day job plus, some of the digital stuff, to get going while you're waiting for like the bigger opportunities and building up kind of this portfolio.
So
Yeah,
James,
like-
are you still in school, James?
Mhm.
Like, are you still finishing up? Okay, so like, how soon till you graduate? Like, as rough estimate.
I still have about a year and a half.
Okay. Okay, when we're done talking, like I want to hear what Scott's saying, but this is something one of my favorite instructors, Mark Michelin, he's like an old storyboard artist. He's not old. I shouldn't say that. He's awesome. But he it was like our second illustration class, and he gave us a homework assignment to contact 50 art directors. And it's the best thing. It literally gave me my first work. You need to do that when we're done with this conversation. Like maybe not 50, but maybe 10 a day, and just start building the habit and get those rejections and pile them up and get over it. Get over the fear. Like that, I know, and I'm not saying you have it. I'm just saying I know the fear because everybody who's been in it has that fear of like, well, what if I approach and what if they think I'm a student, and what if no? Like you need a website up, and you need to hunt work now while you don't have that rent hanging over your head as if you do. Because if you can get in that cycle, then you can be freelance. And people talk crap on freelance all the time, and everybody who works in-house hates freelancers because they have a better life. Freelance is one of the most fun things. I think it's how most artists should start their career. I know I'm speaking from a weird angle. A lot of people think you should start in-house. I work in-house now, but the only reason I'm an art director is because I didn't work in-house. Like if my whole portfolio was built from like the company norm stuff, like I would have no portfolio to show. And when I was, hunting around, I'd be competing with freelancers who are like, they're like the cowboys of the Wild West, just running around like with 6 shooters. They just shoot way better because they're used to shooting random stuff. Like they're on fire. So my point is like, I mean, yes, do take a day job if you have to like work anywhere, like obviously there's no shame in that. But the point being like, now is the time to start looking for work, and testing it out. And like, if you like start hunting, what's weird is like that hunt itself will direct you to work. It's like the hunger. And if you're not hungry, that's when it gets competitive, because somebody who is hungry is going to get that work. And so that, like, to me, I think that's just a big tip of like, when you're done with this conversation, anybody who's watching this, who's an illustrator, like it literally, that there is no degree or paper or anything is going to give you the okay to work professionally. The only thing that's going to let you work professionally is a good portfolio and a hustle, like a crazy hustle. And then the degree will help. The school's going to help. Knowing people like Corey is going to help, like knowing people who already work in the town that you live in, but at the end of the day, like I think that's going to help you out a lot. Scott, where were you going to go?
Okay, so I'm not an art director. I'm not somebody who generally hires people. So, after I'm done with this, Josh can kind of chime in and give his opinion on it. But I'm sort of the opinion of projects over portfolios. So have you ever, I mean, obviously you've looked at Instagram, James, right? Mm-hmm. Have you looked at like Behance? Have you ever like just kind of scanned through Behance?
Yeah, not as often as I probably should, but
well, if you look at Behance, you'll kind of see what I'm talking about. But usually because when you're looking at work on Instagram, it's just a single picture. I mean, you could put like multiple pictures up, and you could have like a series of showing what a project looks like. But it's kind of the same. And what I mean by projects, you can kind of relate it, since you're a comic book artist. You've probably heard this, where comic book companies, they don't want to see pinups, because anyone can draw pinups. Sure, they're cool to look at, but it doesn't tell a story, or it doesn't, So if you just go with just random drawings, and I think Josh is kind of talking about this, like a life drawing or something, but what does that life drawing become? So if you look at Behance, a lot of things you'll see the way they're formatting. They'll show their sketches, then they'll show what's next, and they'll show everything, all the stuff from a finished project, so you can kind of see. And it shows, it's like when you're in math, you got to show your work. it's kind of the same thing. You're not just seeing that finished product. You're seeing what. Silence this phone. Sorry.
Yeah, like that's like one of the main reasons why Corey Carroll always tells us to do case studies on everything.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
to me, that's more impressive than just a cool portfolio piece when you can kind of see, and it also shows initiative. And you don't have to. A lot of people, and maybe I'm sure if Corey's your professor, he's probably mentioned this, but you don't need to actually have work from a client. I mean, it's good. Okay, so you can kind of see that, and I can kind of see how our stuff's coming together. But yeah, and it's also the way it's presented. I mean, just like I said, just kind of take a look around Behance if you want an idea of what I'm talking about. And that stuff just really impresses me when I see how that's presented. But yeah, this let me see. Hold on. All right, let me take a drink. Now I lost my train of thought, but
I brought this up at the wrong time.
yeah, no, I'm just kind of checking this stuff out.
I like the project-based idea, and I might have to get a glass of water.
Oh,
too.
I know what I was saying. Sorry, Josh. But I was just saying, find something you're passionate about and create a campaign around it, and use that in your portfolio. If it's an actual company that exists in the real world, there's no reason why you can't design a campaign for them and show that. It doesn't. I mean, be upfront about it and say this is just a concept that I kind of like. I like this company, and it shows that you. And it kind of flies in the face of kind of what Josh was saying a little bit, that you want to concentrate on one thing, but that one thing can be the finished thing, because all the other things that you know how to do is what makes up that finished piece. And to me, that's what impresses me when I look, and I can kind of see that with some of the examples that are being shown there. But yeah, so I'm just a big proponent of projects over portfolios.
Yes.
And it can be 2 or 3 projects in there, and that's stuff that you can if you do it right, that's the stuff that can kind of get a lot of attention on online. As far as I've seen things where somebody will just decide to take all the NFL helmets and make them like based on Star Wars, well, instead of Broncos, we'll do the Tauntauns or whatever, and then they just take that, or just anything like that, and it's that's the kind of stuff that kind of goes viral, and it's stuff that people take notice and like, oh man, who thought of this? That's kind of cool. It's not anything they were hired to do. They just did it on their own volition, and it's really cool, and that I'm sure that whoever did that got tons of work out of it. So yeah.
So I think something to kind of think about, in addition to everything that Scott and Josh have said so far, is that typically we've got 2 Joshes now. This is exciting.
He's coming in with a counterpoint.
Yeah, and he's going to argue with himself. Somehow we have 2 of you, Josh.
Yeah, I have no idea how to remove. Here we go. Remove. There we go. Sorry.
Now it's just me. There we go. And we've got a question in the chat that I want to get to in a minute. But
internet today.
Yeah, but one thing that I would recommend is that you start intentionally building projects, and so like starting and finishing projects. And I know that you and I have talked kind of off the air, about some projects that you could do, but any of those types of things will lead to work. And so if you can do that and then share it publicly, and then while you're hitting things up, I mean, you could go to a newsstand, right? That dates me a little bit, but I mean, go to a place where there's a bunch of magazines, right? And in the front cover of every one of those magazines is going to be an ad, but in the first few pages of that, there's going to be credits of who did what, and there will be an art director listed in that magazine, and there will also be the illustrators that made that magazine. So for Wired, right, there's a guy that does most of the Wired illustrations, and so I kind of like stalked him online for a little bit. Zohar, I think is his name. I'll have to look him up. But anyway, he showed on his website where he was working. So I got to see where his clients were and that type of thing. And I started to do that. This was years ago. I just went through one month's worth of magazines on the shelf, and I just took a picture with my phone of every single art director and illustrator credits in that magazine. And what it did was, there's not as much editorial illustration in periodicals as there used to be, but all of those illustrators are working illustrators who work for other people as well. And it started introducing me to other industries that are hiring for illustration. Because I would go, and I have a whole bookmark folder full of these guys from several years ago. I did this while I was getting my master's, and each one of them, I would look at every single one of their clients that I could find. I would look at then I would look at all of the illustrators that they're hiring, right? And then I would find out where they worked. And some of them have agents, and some of them are an agency, and some of them are freelance, and some of them, they do all these different things, and it starts to help you kind of get a picture of the available work, because there are.
And the important.
Go ahead, Josh.
Oh, I was just saying, like, the important thing about what Corey's saying too is, like, I know I keep saying, like, isolate your photo. Oh, am I cutting out again?
No, you're good.
You're good.
Oh no, am I? Did I cut out? Okay, cool. The important thing is it helps you isolate, it helps you target what you're trying to hit. So, like, it's weird, but, like, both what Scott is saying and I am saying, I think, are kind of similar in the sense of, like, target your focus when you're, like, after this conversation, when you start sending out queries to art directors, which you're going to do, right? Just pick one, like, just pick one and start there. And that's a good place to start, right? If it's hard, it can be paralyzing to be like, there's so many places. So for a week and a half, target, maybe editorial, because editorial is not a bad place to start, although it's not the best industry now, and then from there, like, maybe target t-shirt companies, and from there maybe spend a week targeting skateboard companies, and then maybe spend a week targeting entertainment industry, and like, the great thing about, like, building projects along the way, like, that's just a hobby, like, that's just your job. That's your job as a creative until you have a job, is just seek work. So, like, I would spend, like, a good hour a day just sending out queries, and then on top of that, like, continue to build your portfolio and your brand. And, like, part of it is that project-based thing. That also helps because if when I am reviewing portfolios, like, the most boring stuff is usually the stuff people did in-house or for clients. But some of the coolest stuff and the most exciting stuff and the stuff where you see a lot of growth is where they were making their own products. And so a lot of what Scott does, like, for like a living now, is basically making his own products, right? And just kind of selling them through different markets. But, like, even that can be a good starting point just to build a good portfolio on, where you're like, I'm going to make a coloring book for kids about, what heroes to grow up to be, right? And Scott made a whole coloring book like that for himself. But my point is, like, as a student, you could do that. And worst case scenario, you have something to sell on, like, Amazon or whatever, and to hawk your own wares. And best case scenario, you have an addition to your portfolio, and you're still sending out those queries, so you're naturally going to start getting professional work. Chris commented in the chats, and I want to mention too, Chris is somebody I graduated with. Chris Cowie would be a good portfolio to look at. Like, that guy and I started around the same time. We picked up whatever work we could get, and we started before we graduated college, and literally I haven't worked a day doing anything but creative since graduating. But a lot of our friends who didn't start in school, had that hard 2 years, and some of them have never worked as creative. So they have, like, a great experience to remember from school, and they have, like, a piece of paper with a degree on it and haven't done anything with it. So, and keep in mind, like, Chris and I, like, the school we went to, like, the class we graduated with, it's a minority of people who aren't working in creative now. But I'm just saying, like, to avoid that, like the best thing to do is just start hunting the work now, and don't let your negative self-talk like stop you from doing it. You know, where it's like negative self-talk is going to be like, well, it's not prepared yet. And there are some people you're probably not prepared yet for, right? But then that gives you the next project, right? Like if you're working for creative, like, and you want to do character design and you want to apply for a character design gig that you know you're not qualified for, like maybe do it. Talk to Corey first, but because there's some bridges you may not want to burn, you want to be able to send more. But the point being, like, at least if you don't feel prepared to do it, you know the areas you need to work on. Where you're like, okay, I need more animals, so I need my next project to have animals in it. I need more environments, and like Scott was saying too, like don't just draw the environment once, because that doesn't show. Like as an art director, when I review portfolios, I need to know that the person's going to be able to design or illustrate whatever I need when I need it in a timely manner and not be a pain in the ass, right? Like to work with. So it's like you got to have a good working attitude, and you have to have the ability to like think on your feet and just kind of make it work, you know? Yeah, Chris was like, oh man, these are so old, because he's had like a million projects since then. He's literally so busy working, he doesn't have time to even update his portfolio. But he's done a bunch of music videos and boarded stuff like that. And a lot of how he got that was like the same thing I'm describing, where it's just like you just hustle, you look for the work, and you hunt, and you got to be able.
Josh froze again.
A little shameless.
Okay.
So Clark, what other questions, or what are you thinking right now? What are some of your thoughts?
Like, I don't know. For me, I don't know. I do feel like I have a better idea of like where to start. I mean, because in order to get work in a creative industry, you have to like be probing that industry, and so it was good to get like a bunch of ideas of like figure out who the art directors are, like follow admirable artists, and try to create projects and stuff like that. And so yeah, I don't know, it just kind of gave me a lot of like really good ideas to at least start where I am now, and then kind of focus on where I would want my my skills to take me. So
yeah. Yeah, so I would put together kind of a game plan. You probably have the same problem that most creatives have, where you have a lot of different ideas of what you should be doing, and you're either kind of frozen on what you should start because you're trying to figure out what the best thing is, or you're trying to do all of them at once. What I recommend is pick one thing and give yourself like a month. You do that one thing for like a solid month. And then at the end of that month, reevaluate. Okay, now that I have that thing, like get an issue of a comic done, and try to do, maybe because you're in schools and you've got a job and stuff like that. So it's not like you can put 8 to 10 hours in it, like a monthly comic artist. But could you do a 12-page comic in a month? Could you do a 6-page comic in a month? And then when you're done with that, then you've got a short comic. And then it's like, okay, now I'm going to see if I can take my storyboards and do, like I'm going to storyboard a really interesting animated short, or whatever. And so you spend like, a month or two on that. But if you work for like 4 to 8 weeks on a project, and that's the only thing you do, and you crank on it and you put in anywhere from 1 to 3 hours a day on that, what you'll find is that a year to 18 months from now, when you graduate, you're gonna have like half a dozen really impressive projects, in addition to the schoolwork, right? Which shows like foundational stuff, and that you can follow instructions and things like that. But the challenge, and I felt this myself and still feel this, is oftentimes we feel like we're not ready to do that. like we're waiting for permission to do that, or we're waiting till our skills get good enough, or we're waiting for whatever. And finishing is way more important than toxic perfectionism. So I would come up with a plan, and maybe tonight write down a list of like the top 10 things that you want in your portfolio a year from now, like finished projects that you want in your portfolio. And then you're like, which one of these could I finish in the next 2 to 6 weeks right now? And you kind of like triage them. Like triage is like, a bus full of nuns gets in a car accident. Okay. And they're going to bring everybody to the hospital. They have to triage them. Okay. Who needs to be taken care of immediately, and who can sit in the waiting room for an hour? Right. And so you take your list of projects and you triage it. What can I knock out right now? And what's going to be like, honestly, something that I need to like level up in skills a little bit before I get to it. And then you just start knocking it out. That's kind of the biggest thing I would do while you're starting to research the industry and like contact different people and stuff, because the worst thing that can happen is somebody is interested, and then they look you up and they find that you have like half a finished project, and you're like, right. But if they show up and you've got 3 finished projects and you're in the middle of a 4th one, then that's a whole different story. So that's kind of the biggest thing that I would do right now.
Also, keep in mind, when art directors are looking at portfolios, a lot of them can draw. So like they know if you're hiding hands, they know if you're hiding feet, like they know all the tricks, right? So like if you review your own portfolio, and I haven't seen any of this in your portfolio, we saw it, and it's really impressive, I think. But it's just the point being, like, if you, when you review your own portfolio, notice you're relying on a lot of tricks, try to get those tricks gone. Like take out, like if it's a action character scene and you're hiding your character behind rocks, like maybe remove the rocks from the area you didn't want to draw, and then draw that area until you can confidently have it in your portfolio.
And one big thing that
I'm freezing again.
No, you're not. One big thing that I've done along those lines that Josh is saying that I found really helpful is when I identify a weakness, I build a project around that weakness. I build a project that requires me to be strong in that thing. And so it's like, I'm not good at lip syncing. And so then I do an entire animation where I have to lip sync every character. And then at the end of that project, I have a project, but I also have a new skill set that isn't a weakness anymore. And so like if I was bad at drawing hands, right? At some point in time, I am going to have a project that is going to be mostly hands. I'm probably going to do like a short comic where somebody's, Italian or deaf or something, where there's a lot of hand communication and gesture, because it forces me to do that thing. And so don't just do like studies. Don't just be like, I'm bad at this, I'm going to do a study. Say, I'm bad at this, I'm going to do the bare minimum study to get going, and I'm going to build this project around this weakness so that at the end you got another project in your portfolio and you're better at that thing. So we have a question in the chat. I'm curious. Would you recommend more of a variety or perfecting your medium? If you had to choose one, which one is more important?
As an art director, it depends where it is, but as an art director, I'd say like, variety is key, because it's like, if you can't work in multiple styles and you're stuck in one lane, if I have to throw you in a different lane, like I need to know you can go there. And so getting comfortable with kind of different mediums, different varieties, definitely different software. I've been at this long enough. So is Scott. Like Scott probably knew a lot of guys who like banked their careers on Quark, and then it changed to InDesign, and a lot of those guys were out of work. And so it's like, don't hinge your career too much on one piece of software. Like, get comfortable. But then again, I like Corey was saying, like, you kind of can only speak to your own experience. For me, it's been an advantage to, like, in my personal work, be known for a certain style, but to, in my professional work, have the ability to be a complete chameleon. It's a skill that has not left me out of work for a long time. And that's a good, I would recommend it. But I could also say, you know, like if you want to go into storyboarding, there's some guys that work in storyboarding that have just legendary style, but they're quick and they're fast, and nobody can beat them. So I don't think they're going to be out of work anytime either. So I don't know if that's an answer.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think, Scott?
It's difficult because, I mean, I'm somebody who likes, I mean, you know, I've dabbled in different mediums and things like that. But I mean, it seems like I'm getting conflicting advice from Josh. So I just want to be clear, because before you were talking about how, you know, focus on one particular aspect, and then you're kind of, it seemed like you were going down the other route. So that's where I'm a little confused. But
Yeah.
And also, I think
I can clarify.
Yeah, please.
Okay, so let me clarify. I mean, like when you're looking at the spectrum of work out there, that's what I'm talking about. Like,
okay,
when you're sitting at, like, when you're in that mysterious position we all started out at, with like, I've got some skill. How do I take this skill and get work? Like, how do I start getting paid work? Right? It's just a tough place to be. Am I freezing again? I think I'm frozen.
No, you're fine.
I hope I didn't freeze. Did I freeze there?
No.
Okay. Okay. Sorry. I'm paranoid about freezing because of my terrible internet connection. So like the point being, like, it can be really daunting if you start thinking like, well, there's the whole world out there, and I wouldn't mind working in this. I wouldn't mind working in that. Like, and most students are there. So pick one and aim for that first. That's what I mean by like picking a lane. Like if your dream is to work in character art, like figure out where you want to work in the end game. Like, know that path. It can change, but at least have an idea of that, because that's going to gear a lot of your decisions along the way. But as for like style, don't pigeonhole yourself to a style. You know, and be adaptable. And also, even on that path, like that path might lead you working, you know, my first gig, actually, I was wrong about the first gig being an education company, because it was actually peeling Ruby Lith film for like a screen print company, you know, like, and doing production art. What's that?
Nobody knows what that is but us old people.
Yeah, it's an old thing, but it was basically setting up screen prints for production, and a very boring job. But the skills I picked up from that, I ended up taking to t-shirt art, which I got really known for. And so, like, weirdly enough, that annoying job where I was just starting as a grunt, like, helped later on. So you'll find that too, like later in your career, James, like you're going to see any early things you get, like those little seeds all start playing, like they all start kind of sprouting. And the one common denominator is like, you have to be kind of stubborn and not give up. And have like a desire and a hunger to be working in creative. And, but I hope that kind of answers like the conflict, because I by no means think you have to pick like, I draw in this style and that's the only style I draw in. And not that that's bad, but that's not the direction I would go. But I would definitely, if you really want to work, like if your dream is to work on Star Wars or on a Star Wars property, doing you know, designs on like some of the machines or like the stuff on Star Wars, like have that in your head, like keep that as a guiding light. You may not even get there, but it's like, I literally have a friend who in school was like, all I want to do is work on Star Wars, and he worked on Force Awakens. So it's like, you know what I mean? Like it's a weird thing that happens, but it's like, he didn't start there, but it's like having that goal, having that end goal can kind of help guide you along the way. And in the darker times, like when you're doing creative, like it can be full of ups and downs, and especially finding work can be very difficult. And you might hit dark times, but at least you'll have that light to kind of chase after, where you're like, okay, but I do want to get there. Like I do want to actually do that thing. So yeah.
Okay, I got out my whiteboard for my answer. You ready? Sort of point out, Chris is saying, I absolutely worked at it, but my dream changed after some time.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it though. Found satisfying avenues I didn't know existed. And that's kind of like the idea is that you kind of leave the shore. You know, if I'm standing at the dock, I can only see so far and I only understand what I can see. But if I get in my boat and I leave in any direction, my vantage point changes, my experience, I'm more experienced in the water. I've got more miles or more nautical miles or whatever it is under my belt, and my vantage point changes. I can see more, and so I start seeing more opportunity. Okay, here's my answer to this question. I think you should do both things because I had a different experience from Josh. When I was getting my master's degree, I had a professor tell me, and it was the best advice I've ever gotten. Your portfolio looks horrible. It looks like it was done by 5 different people poorly. And he said, so pick something and get good at it, right? Because what I had done is I had made a career out of, I think I had been working for about 14 years at that point in time. I had made a career out of being like this part, right? Right. Oops, it's not drawing anymore. Come back. Why did I lose my... Let's go here. So there we go. So I had made a career of being like a mile wide and an inch deep, right?
Yeah.
I could do photography and video and copywriting and design and a little bit of illustration and a little bit of animation. I had a little bit of everything, but not like I didn't really excel in anything. I came across this theory called the T-shaped skill set, or the T-shaped student, right? And this is actually what the program that I'm in, that I teach in, we try to build T-shaped students. So the idea is that you get a broad swath, because the broad swath, the foundation, that's going to get you work at smaller companies, right? Mm-hmm. The smaller the company, the more hats you're going to have to wear, and the larger the company, the more niche you're going to have to be, right? And so, but then you don't stop there. You pick one of those and you start drilling down and get really good at one of those. As you're getting really good at one of those, some of these other ones, you're going to start naturally getting good at it. So when I started doing this, I was in video and I was like, you know what? I'm going to teach myself how to do photography. My video improved as my photography improved because they're related. And then I moved on to design. I said, I'm going to learn design. And so I went out and I started learning design. And as I learned design and learned more about composition, my photography got better and my video composition got better. And then when I started learning illustration, right, I started drilling down in illustration. Everything else started getting better because I started drilling down. So eventually what happens is that I have a really wide and solid foundation, but I've got this core skill set in the middle that I'm very good at. Now, I'm talking about different skills. You could apply this to styles. You could apply it to media. You could apply it to whatever. Getting really good at oils is going to help you in acrylic. Getting really good at ink is going to help you in pencils, right? It's all kind of connected. Like a lot of people, I know Josh and Scott used to kind of, I don't know if question is the right word, but wonder at how I was able to go from like not drawing to drawing fairly well. I mean, okay, I guess. I don't know. It's hard complimenting myself on the air, but to doing good in a short period of time. And it's because I brought already with me a very solid foundational T-shaped skill set. So I was really wide in a lot of different things. And then I had started drilling down in comparable areas so that when I started learning illustration, I already knew composition. I already knew design. I already knew, how to compose a shot in a viewfinder. So once I got illustration, then I started moving into animation. And when I moved into animation, I brought with me, it's not like I started from zero. I started from design and photography and video and illustration. And now I'm moving into animation. And so like, I feel like the idea of getting like a T-shape is a really good thing to do. But I wouldn't focus on getting good at everything all at the same time, because you'll be really bad at all of it, right? You can't do more than one thing at a time well. And so focus on something and get proficient at that thing, and then continue to do that thing as you expand it. So you're basically drilling down and expanding this descender, right? Your drill down core competency, you're expanding that laterally eventually. But I'd start with stuff that's going to get you work, right? And that's going to be your wide skill set at a smaller company, typically, right? Unless you're already really proficient in one thing. I would have a wide skill set, and then I would start drilling down with that wide skill set. Because if you're the guy or gal that shows up to the table and you're, proficient in design, somebody else is proficient in design, and you can say, and I also know a little bit of After Effects.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even need to know a lot. You can just say, I can make stuff move a little bit. That's that in a lot of situations at a smaller company, the edge that will get you that job. I mean, I know people that take classes from me that are like PR students, right? They're not even going to go into stuff visually, but they're like, hey, I could write a good press release. I've got great strategy. Oh, and by the way, I'm moderately proficient in Adobe Illustrator, or I can compose. Here's some of the visual work that I've done. And that's the thing that gets them in their job. We did a survey 2 years ago of our graduates, and 23% of the people that took the survey were in my emphasis, the visual emphasis. 93% of them were using visuals on a weekly basis in their job. And so even if you're not going into this type of thing, knowing a little bit about it can be the edge, and vice versa. If you can illustrate and you can write clearly, you're way better off than somebody who can just illustrate.
Yeah.
So
and that'll help you. That'll help you in more executive positions too, because there's a lot of people who can design well, and there's a lot of people who can illustrate well. But once you start getting to like executive level stuff, like there's not a lot of people who can write up a good report well, who can write a good, like, honestly, frankly, like a good email. And so having competency in like communication is a massive benefit. And I here's where I'm gonna. It's funny because like Corey and I always find this happening on this show where we'll sort of say something and it ends up being gray. And this is definitely one of those areas where it is gray, because while being adaptable and being able to work in any style has suited me, professionally, I don't present that. And what suited me in when I was known for like t-shirt art was a specific style and a specific look that I was really good at. And then there were other things where I could do that, but I wasn't really good at those things. And it's still to this day, like my real target is like this kind of stuff. Like you give me this, like hand lettering, black and white, like I can do that very well. And I have a specific style. But at the same time, if I'm at my work and I have to do a UPA style poster for a national park, I can do that too. I'm not going to do it as well as somebody who like that's their core competency, but I can mimic it, and I can do that with a lot of styles. So I think being comfortable in both is kind of good. But I definitely would say if you don't have those core foundations, it can really hurt, because styles come and go as far as like trends and stuff, and like the ability to be adaptable, especially for like day job type stuff, especially early student work. A lot of the time you're not going to get the sexy work. You might. I've heard that story many times too, where some students just get out and instantly get like that killer client. But in general, you're going to, start out with like the car mechanic or like the fast food joint, like local work. But I also want to highlight, like Scott and I had my friend Josh who made this hat on, he made this graphic. And this is for a food truck that's local here. And yet he does a lot of local graphic design. Like that's what he built his business on. And yet like he does it so well and makes them so cool that it's like, you could put it next to like DK&G or like the high-end design firms that are working with giant clients, and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. And so like there's that approach too, where it's like, but I do think like when it especially comes to the smaller clients, Corey's dead on. Like you got to have those base skills, but honing in on like what you're good at, like that's what art's about. Like it's all about you communicating your own thing. And I think that's where the art part comes in, where it's like, yeah, be an artist, like be an artist too. Don't forget amid the commercial part, don't let that drown out like the artist that's communicating, and that includes style, right?
Yeah.
Scott,
I can't even count the number of CPAs and lawyers and dentists that were my clients when I was 24.
Oh yeah. Dental's a good pickup job for like an early illustrator, because they always need like these boring renderings. I had a lot of friends who picked up like, like tooth renderings, like,
Yeah.
And if you can do that like kind of 80s airbrush style in like on Photoshop, like that's good work at the beginning. The catch is, and this way I advise students, I mean, students should do whatever they need to do to make a living, but I always try to dissuade them from getting in-house too early, because there are a lot of people who end up locked in-house at a small firm for a really long period of time and never go anywhere, and never really be able to experience the joys of like, and the terror of getting those weird jobs that are out from left field, where it's like, on one day you need to draw like a close-up of a face that's expressing like the emotion in an article, and then the next day you have to do panoramic.
Oh no, Josh froze again. Okay, I'll pick this up with a counterpoint since Josh froze. My counterpoint is I never tell students not to go in-house. I went in-house, but the main thing I think is that if you go in-house, you keep working on your personal projects. I think one of the biggest and most important things in your life is that you are creating things that you're not required to do, regardless of whether you're in-house or freelance, because you're gonna be done creatively if you're like artist by assignment only. So Chris says freelance is like career dating. Yes, that makes a lot of sense. I like that. That's good stuff. It's like speed dating for careers. That's good stuff. All right. Well, we're at 90 minutes. That's a good long episode. Clark, any final thoughts or quick questions or?
No, I think I got a lot out of this, and so at least for where I'm at, like I have some ideas on where to start, and it's kind of work from there.
Okay, for those people that are kind of interested, where should we find your stuff and what should we do about it?
So you can go onto my Instagram. It's right there, and then my YouTube. It's called Sketchbook Academy. There's not a lot of content on there just yet, but I'm hoping to get a lot more on there where it just kind of goes through the basics on like drawing and then hopefully work up to more advanced artwork there. But everything's still growing, still starting from scratch. So
yeah, I watched your most recent video on I think it was on depth, and it was good. I liked it. I liked the thinking that you had behind that. Josh, where can we find your stuff?
Well, if I don't cut out again, and by the way, James, I wanted to say real quick, like I want to apologize for my passion too. I know it's possible for you to start working now because I did, and I had a lot of friends who did, and the whole time, all our classmates were, well, not all our classmates, but a lot of our classmates were like, how do you do that? And you're like, you just kind of do it. Like that's all there is to it. And then weirdly enough, like a lot of them, like I said, would be out of school and then be kind of calling like, how did you get work? And you're like, you just like send emails and like hunt for it. And then they hire you and they're like, but how? But like, and it's like, that's it. That's the magic bullet. So the reason I'm passionate about it is like your portfolio has a lot of promise and there's no reason you shouldn't start like today. If you were like a freshman or like brand new in school, I wouldn't be saying that, but it's like when you're at the point you're at, I know it's a lot on top of, schoolwork and stuff like that, but it's just like, don't wait for somebody to give you permission. Like just go for it. Like, but anyhow, you can, that's why I get passionate about that kind of stuff. It's one of the reasons I loved when I did teach college. That is one of the things I miss is being able to inspire students to like do that, because I even had a few who dropped out. Don't do that to Corey, but I had a few who dropped out and started working for Nickelodeon, like just because I was like, your portfolio is really good. You should just go. And they're like, okay, but shouldn't I? And I'm like, you don't need the paper. Just go. Like, you should finish the program because you're going to get a lot from Corey. But my point is just, like, don't wait for a piece of paper. Don't wait for, like, somebody to give you the okay, because it's not that kind of industry. And that's what's beautiful about art. It's not like a black and white, like you follow these 5 steps and you end up with work. It's way more gray and kind of Wild West, and that's the fun of it. Rambling. Anyhow,
I want to say really quick, it seems like the real secret to success is to be in a class with Josh 20 years ago. Every story you told was like, I had a classmate. So it's like, I think that's the trick. Is just go to school with Josh.
The class I graduated with was insane. Like, and I am the least successful of the people I graduated with. I'm just proud of the people. But that's another thing to keep in mind is, like, the people you're going to school with, like all your classmates right now, those are the people who are going to inspire you throughout your career. So, like, Corey works on that too, like building that connection with all the students and stuff. And that's one of the most valuable things you're going to get out of there. And also, like, honestly, Corey's track record of hiring after college is pretty good. I've seen the stats, so it's a good that's a good transfer rate. So anyhow, but you can check out my work at joshkemble.com. quarterlystories.com is where you can find my comic, and you can go on Amazon and buy this book and keep it up there. Even though it's an indie, I think it can get up there. So yeah.
Awesome. And Scott, where can we find your stuff? And if you want to throw in a final piece of advice.
Yeah, you can find my stuff at Serkworks.com. I'm also at Serkworks on YouTube. And I just kind of want to iterate what Corey was saying with that T-shaped analogy, because that's kind of what I was trying to explain, but I couldn't articulate it as well as Corey. So, yeah, I mean, that's just great advice. So I'm gonna have to, watch that and see how he said that, just so I can relate that back, because that's exactly kind of what I was thinking, what I was trying to say. So
maybe I'll have to do some repurposed content on just that section there.
Yeah.
You should, Corey, because it was hard to pinpoint the ambiguity in that, where it's like you, at one point, you do want to specialize in a style, and at another point, you kind of want to have a broad set of skills, and that's a perfect way of describing it.
And there's a book that's not my idea. There's a book that comes from. So maybe I'll go get that book and put something together, a little Instagram slider or something. But yeah, and you should go check out Scott's stuff. Is everything still for sale? Have you gotten around to taking a sale?
Yeah, it's still 50% off.
All right, act now.
The digital products are.
On the digital products, all right.
Sorry, James, check out Scott's stuff too and his projects, because like the sort of stuff he's building for his own brand and stuff too, that could be a really good inspiration for you to do that as well. Like while you're hunting for work and building projects with Corey, like that's a good way to build projects where it's like, I'm going to have this final product and there's a path along it. Like Scott's like a master at that and has built like a massively, impressive like portfolio from that, Yeah,
not necessarily the stuff that's in my gallery, which is sort of portfolio which I should remove because I'm not really looking for that type of work, but more the online stores, more my personal work. So
yeah, that's great. And you can find my stuff at CoreyKerr.com. If you go to CoreyKerr.com/online, it'll tell you everywhere where I'm online, which is mostly Twitter and YouTube and Instagram. You're on my YouTube, so if you haven't hit the thumbs up, hit that thumbs up, and subscribe and ring the bell and all the dumb stuff that everybody says. But yeah, I would do that. And there's a bunch of people in the chat that I recognize and a few people that I don't recognize, and so welcome to all the new people. And then I would just say one of the biggest things, and I'll just say this over and over and over again for anybody looking to get into anything, is do it when you're not required to do it. And that's personal projects. There is, I was interviewing Sean Crystal, who taught at SCAD, and has worked for DC and Marvel and Boom and Oni and everybody. And we both agreed that is the single most obvious indicator of somebody who's going to be successful is that they do the thing when they're not required to do the thing, whatever that thing is. And it's huge. And if you're not driven to do it when you're not required to do it, you need to go find a different thing, or you need to do some soul searching and find the drive to be that type of person. Because I think everybody can do it. And it's the secret to success is that exceptional people don't exist. There are normal people who choose to do exceptional things that are perceived as being exceptional people. And those are the people that get jobs. It's not actually that hard to stand out in the workforce because most of the workforce is made up of lazy people who don't do much.
I love it.
So all you have to do is not be a lazy person and be perceived as somebody who's exceptional by doing exceptional things, which is, are you kidding me? You made that comic book and nobody paid you? You drew 60 pages? You did like 3 issues? That's amazing.
Dude, so
and then all of a sudden, sorry, what was you going to say, Josh?
Weird thing, like this thing, like I have like some pages of this in my portfolio for my art director job, right? Like they're not going to have me do indie comics where I work.
Right.
But it's like, it had that effect, like where it's like, oh, wait, this is hand done. And it's like, yeah, I can do that too. I mean, that's just personal work. But it's like that sort of thing that suddenly puts you in a different class than like the person who's coming and being like, here's the thing I did for the man. Here's the thing I did for the man. Like, don't just do stuff for the man. Because like that makes for a really stale portfolio and a stale life. And like Corey was saying, like different career paths, but like in creative, the joy of creative is that self-expression stuff. So like, yeah. I'm just trying to 100% second Corey.
And having said that, you guys are all awesome. Go make something. We'll see you in a few days.